This is Corolla Digital. This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on. Not just going to get on. And welcome to the best hour in the universe. It's Reasonable Doubt. I'm Adam Carolla, and that's Mark Garrigus. Where?
In the beautiful city of Manhattan. And you know what I'm doing right now?
I have no idea.
Summer's here. Guess what? You know what that means? Tommy John.
Oh.
How are your old cotton boxers? Because it's soggy and damp? They weren't designed to handle all this sweat. Check out Tommy John, which combines the latest in fabric technology with patented wedgie-proof designs, almost like wearing nothing at all. No swamp-like conditions down below. Tommy John's moisture-wicking fabrics pull perspiration right off your body. Cool cotton fabrics. They dry. I dried mine 4 or 5 times faster, and they keep you 2 to 3 times cooler than traditional cotton. Backed by the best pair you'll ever wear, or its free guarantee. Stay cool all summer long with Tommy John. No adjustment needed.
I'm wearing them right now, and like I say, give a little shot of talc down there before you leave the house. You get an extra couple of wearings out of your Tommy Johns. Go ahead, Gary.
Hurry to TommyJohn.com/Adam for 20% off your first order. That's TommyJohn.com/Adam for 20% off your first order. TommyJohn.com/Adam.
So, Mark, on my program on ACS, the question of Camille Cosby getting divorced to protect assets came up. What is your take as a seasoned attorney on that? Is there an actual divorce coming? Is this strictly a maneuver? Is it to protect assets? Is it both? And how would it work?
Well, one area of the law where there is pretty much a solid, all family law and divorce law is basically state to state. It isn't generally a federal uniform family law act or something like that, but there isn't child support. But for divorce and for assets, it usually is state by state. California, for instance, although I think he's in Pennsylvania, California, there's a case that says even where you're alleging fraud, that somebody's trying to defraud a creditor, we're still basically going to give you the benefit of the doubt because we want to promote the policies behind family law, and family law generally is impenetrable unless you can prove something quite to the contrary, and it requires a rather high burden of proof. So that generally is the case, that the family law courts got the first right of refusal, so to speak.
So if Camille is thinking about a divorce, what exactly is she accomplishing financially?
Financially, look, if you're Camille Cosby, who's going to say that you haven't put up with enough? So there, you come into it there. I mean, they've been married for God knows how many years. He's got more money than he could spend in any lifetimes, and he could never spend as much money as he's got left at his age. So the assets could get transferred. If the assets get transferred before he is incarcerated or passes away, she's basically not going to be liable unless somebody can come up with some kind of a theory whereby she was enabling him or doing something along those lines.
So if somebody said, all right, we got the criminal case, let's focus on the civil case. We want to go after Cosby's money, and Cosby's money gets transferred to his wife. We cannot take the amount that was transferred to the wife in the divorce because that's considered her money, not his money, and she shouldn't be punished unless she somehow aided and abetted this activity, which maybe someone could make a reasonable argument that she knew what was going on, or she got prescriptions to roofies under her name and passed them along. Like, I mean, I guess you would have to prove that, but short of proving that she was involved with the crime, they couldn't touch her money.
Right, and then that's basically what it is. And what happened here Finally, Cosby came to his senses and got rid of it. You saw what the news was. I take it on your show. I didn't hear the tape, but he fired his lawyers, which I don't know what he was thinking when he hired Mesereau in the first place. I mean, it made no sense. He had a local guy who did well last time for him by getting a hung jury. And, it's very difficult, I think I've said before, for any lawyer in a state court case to come into another state if you don't know the nuances of that practice there. So it made really no sense there. Fired them, also hired a local lawyer, so maybe he's a reasonable doubt listener. Cosby is, because he should have done that before. And that's where the rumor started that Camille was considering a divorce, out of those reports, so that everybody understands where this came from.
I have an interesting piece of inside information to pass along to you. For a change, I'm going to give you a little privy skinny. First, I'll tell you guys that this show was sponsored by the aforementioned Tommy John. You go there, TommyJohn.com/M. TheraWorksRelief.com. By the way, do we have a tube of that around here, Gary? If we do, bring it in.
I believe there might be. I saw Drew.
And ZipRecruiter.
Was Drew using it?
Oh, he loves it.
He walked out of here with about 8 tubes of it.
ZipRecruiter.com/down. LegalZoom as well. LegalZoom.com/down. I was hanging around with Willie T. Ribbs, who I made the documentary.
Subject of the documentary.
Yes, and I can't remember if I told you or not, but his phone rang, and it was Cosby. And it was Cosby with... Now, this is what Willie told me.
Okay.
In Indianapolis for the 500 a couple of weeks ago, the phone rang. It was Cosby, and Cosby had questions about a sponsor from back in the day and wanted to know if there was money still around from that sponsor, or if he had any of it, or was basically trying to find the origins of some money from the late 80s, early 90s, which suggested to me that somebody was auditing him or they were auditing them. As a lawyer, how would that make sense?
In divorce, that could, because what they do in divorce, wow, that's a good piece. That's a good data piece. In divorce, one of the things that you will often find is that they do what's called a forensic audit. A forensic audit, even though forensics suggests that they're going to, that it's kind of prospective, it's actually retroactive when it comes to the law. So if you want to trace backwards as to where money went or where it was going, or whether it went into, I don't know, whether they've got a prenup, postnup, antenup, or whatever, but if there was some allegation that something was diverted one way or another, which would be the logical assumption based on what you just said, because why else? I don't think Cosby was asking him because he wanted to get paid, was it? Did you get that impression? Hey, where's that money? I'm owed that money?
I think the answer of Willie T. saying, I have $100,000 in a safe deposit box in Zurich, and I can go ahead and have it delivered to your home outside of Philadelphia in 48 hours. That's a very low likelihood, low percentage answer.
Right.
So more probably an audit than an actual rebate, right?
Yeah, exactly. And since the IRS statute of limitations has expired, my belief would be that it may have something to do with what's called tracing in the divorce action, or maybe they're doing something where they've agreed that the divorce is not public and that it's going to be private, or maybe it was agreed to be in arbitration and they're doing a tracing.
Here's an interesting proposition. This may be the first divorce in history where the male is arguing that the female deserves more than 50%.
You could be very correct, because maybe, somebody might argue that if she got a ton of the money and he got maybe a life estate in a house, meaning that he could live in the house until he dies, but that's not something that he can convey to somebody, that would be a divorce that was a pretextual divorce if somebody wanted to do something. But, you take a look at USC is getting sued this week for the gynecologist, and people have speculated as to whether it's going to be, Michigan State-style numbers, which I think was $500 million. Can you imagine? Now
tell me about the USC. I don't know about this story. I don't know about the Michigan State story either.
Yeah, the USC story is that a guy who was a gynecologist there, who is now, they've done a search warrant was executed this week on him, and USC is in the crosshairs, and there's probably, 20-something women who have been, who have claimed that he was acting untowards, assaulting or doing
yeah. The Michigan State was a U.S. Olympic guy.
Correct.
Okay, now I know that story.
Gary could tell us the settlement, but it was reputed to be $500 million.
That's what I read.
Well, in a world, as Mike August likes to describe it, in a world full of empty bags, guess who is a overstuffed goose? Universities, right?
Yeah. Well, and USC, which I think has vaulted to the top 10 of endowments in the world. So they're ripe for the pickings, and this one looks like, the Max Nikias, who was the head of USC, who apparently, if you believe it, was looking the other way, had to resign. And we've got somebody who now the criminal authorities are going to come in on. Now, take that. That goes back to the Cosby situation. He's now been convicted. That criminal conviction, because it's a higher burden of proof, can be used and is admissible or should be conceivably admissible in the civil cases. He's looking at Cosby's looking at monumental criminal exposure. Civil exposure, yeah.
Civil
exposure, because the criminal conviction makes it a slam dunk in a lot of ways. Clearly for Constance already settled, but people are, all the other accusers are going to come in there, and it's going to be a cha-ching fest.
Well, let me tease that, and I'll get to Cosby and OJ in a second. I just want to dissect what you just said and tell me whether it makes sense or not. First, I'll tell you about TheraWorks Relief. I just have been rubbing this stuff into my left hand because all the years of boxing, left hand's a little bit sore. That's my good hand. Well, not so much anymore. But now I got the TheraWorks rubbed in there. I was literally doing it while you were talking. So if you suffer from muscle cramps in your legs, your feet, Relief is in sight. TheraWorks with an X at the end. Relief. Topical foam. I was just spreading it on, like I said. Clinically proven to relieve muscle cramps fast. With daily use, TheraWorks Relief even prevents muscle cramps before they start. You don't even need a prescription. And just minutes, apply, absorbs easily and quickly. It's invisible, and it's basically odorless. It smells good, actually. And it works. Drew loves this stuff. TheraWorks Relief. Get it today at CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens, pharmacies, or at TheraWorksRelief.com. So in terms of exposure civilly, the burden of proof is much less than the criminal. And in a case like OJ, even though he wasn't convicted criminally, it was easy to convict him civilly. And once you get the criminal conviction, then it's the easiest in the world because you've essentially already went past the burden of proof because it's higher in the criminal case, right? So
Correct.
You just
Correct.
do the math, and he can't win.
She's settled once. Constant did back in 2006. In fact, people remember that was the deposition that they used that was sealed and then unsealed, even though he thought, and this is actually on appeal, I think one of his better issues is the unsealing, the using of that, the DA kind of making assurances that if he settled, there wasn't going to be any criminal prosecution. And then you combine that with letting in the other females' testimony under a similar acts kind of a theory will be front and center. But having said that, the conviction now comes in. You go to trial now against him. He's either in custody or he's a convicted felon. That comes in. They get to hear why that was as if they didn't know, meaning the jury. And my goodness, it's Katie bar the door, as they say, in terms of what a jury will do to him.
We live in a weird world where Anthony Bourdain kills himself in France, getting ready to sample some Michelin-rated cuisine the next day, but Cosby and O.J. never think about it, which is weird.
And by the way, how many people said to you, or did you hear say, that his life, his so-called job, was their dream? Bourdain, right?
Well, this is how you know depression is depression, and happiness can't be bought, or you can't travel to it. It just is, because the idea that this guy is jet setting around the world, sampling cuisines and having a nice Thai iced tea with Obama, you can't imagine a better lifestyle. Like Jimmy Kimmel has a great lifestyle, but he has to go work his ass off every single night. And
right, that's work. But look, trying to be funny as opposed to getting. Remember what they were. That one interview that was getting played on an endless loop on CNN was he was talking about how they didn't mind him if he got trashed during the meals. And I mean, can you imagine? I mean, that it kind of reminds me, Adam. I thought about you and I at Christmas in my house every year. Can you imagine if somebody was filming that and that's what they called work?
Put up GoPro this year. Let's see if we can sell it to YouTube Red.
Exactly.
So,
and on that note, hold on. Time for a mid-year check-in on your to-do list for 2018. Since we're mid-year from Christmas, either way, LegalZoom is extending their friends and family discount to everyone right now. Limited time. Guess how much off? 10%.
3%. 10%? What the
three
hell?
Times that. Off things you keep putting off. Small business owners, like me, like you. Save on your LLC, DBA, S-Corp, and more. Wrap up your last will or living trust before you go on summer vacation. LegalZoom is not a law firm, but if legal questions are holding you up, their network of independent attorneys can provide advice for your business, estate plan, and more. Isn't that right, Gary?
That is absolutely right. Accomplish the things you need to get done at LegalZoom.com now, and save 10% with LegalZoom's Friends and Family discount. Just be sure to enter promo code DOUBT in the referral box at checkout. This offer is only available for a limited time, so hurry to LegalZoom.com now and use promo code DOUBT for 10% off. LegalZoom, where life meets legal. LegalZoom.com.
I have a great question for you, Mark Garrigus.
Yes, Adam.
In the world of sports, once they sign a quarterback, a first-round guy to a 5-year, $150 million whatever, it kind of sets a precedent in the bar, and then some of the other guys around the league going, well, honey, that guy's getting that much. And it just kind of keeps going. All forms of life sort of work that way.
Right.
In civil cases, like with Cosby, the fact that Erin Andrews got spied on in her hotel room and somebody cut her a check for, I don't know, $30 or $40 million or something insane for being spied on, not being physically touched. The fact that Bill O'Reilly had somebody get $32 million, and we're still not exactly sure what happened, but we don't think it involved roofies and digital manipulation. Are those precedents that the lawyer of Cosby's victims will go in and share in front of a group? Like, would you bring that up? Would you go, Erin Andrews got $40 million and she didn't even know what was going on?
Well, if you're going to do it in a mediated setting, and what a mediated setting is if you've got some retired judge or somebody who's devoted their career to doing mediations, and you do a mediation statement, those kinds of things would be things you'd put in there. Somebody on the defense side would say, well, Erin Andrews, the jury went wild because they heard about the jerk-offs talking about at dinner, passing around the pictures and saying that she looked like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Girl or something like that. And then if they talk about Michigan State or something, that'll be, they'll say, well, the provost or the president knew this, that, or the other thing and turned a blind eye to it. I mean, so there's that give and take, but there is a certain bar as to what you have to leap over if you're going to. I mean, it's just I'm sitting in a room right now, and my superstar associate Ben Mysalis just walked in, and Ben always, when he goes in there, says the last person you want in a mediation is me, because number one, I've got a short attention span, and number two, I just blow it up because I keep telling him I'd rather just try the case. I mean, screw you, I don't want to do this. And so Ben always plays and it's actually the truth, because he will be more reasonable than I will be in a mediated setting or trying to settle this, because I'd rather go and talk to a jury. The jury is supposed to be the conscience of the community, so I want to talk to the jury, and I want them to send a message, although, as my father used to say, in response, if you want to send a message, use Western Union. But
I've seen Garrigus and Ben in action, and they do a move called good cop, boring cop.
Pretty good. I won't tell Ben you said that.
I love Ben.
I know you do. But Ben, what can I reveal about what transpired today? Anything? It was definitely a good day. Who did it involve? Can I say who it involved? It involved Colin. We spent the day, that's why we're in New York, spent the day with Colin, our client, and maybe shortly, I'd stay tuned for some news very shortly, I think.
Can I make some safe assumptions with you and Kaepernick?
Yes.
You've spent a lot of hours traveling around the country with Colin, and this is a contingency case?
Yes, this is I think it's fair to say that it's a contingency case.
So it is possible for you to walk away with zero after all the travel and all the hours that you have wrapped up in this case. Now, you must feel very strongly that that's not going to be the outcome of this case.
One of the things I like to tell people when they, if they use derogatory or pejorative things about lawyers, remember, the lawyer invests in a case. So I don't know I've never thought whether I don't calculate. In fact, I rarely know how much costs have been incurred on a case, because I just don't think about that. If I'm in for a dime, I'm in for a dollar, as the old expression goes. But if you lose, I've gambled. I've wagered whatever my time, the associate's time, the overhead, the expenses, and everything else. So at a certain point there, if I lose, it's not just zero. I've got an opportunity cost and out-of-pocket hard expenses that can be significant, to say the least.
Well, this one would be significant, because I feel like almost every time we've spoken in the last 6 months, you've been either out of town or doing some function related to or traveling with Colin. So,
Ace, do you know how he got to New York?
How did you get to New York?
Oh, my God. I was telling Gary, I never knew that there is a network of rock and roll and hip-hop artist tour buses that go across the country. And
with your eye.
With the eye. So I can't fly. I literally cannot fly. And I thought the doctor was just exaggerating. But and I'll tell the story of how I got cross-country, but I had to take a bus to get cross-country because I had to be back here for a session, so to speak, today. And as I was going up the mountain, all of a sudden I start feeling kind of some throbbing pain in the side of my head. And then I realized, I'm climbing at an altitude, which was apparently less than what I was supposed to, but it was significant. I mean, to the point where it was painful. But what they did was, one client of mine who had a tour bus took me to Oklahoma City, and so he sent me there. And then I picked up another client's tour bus at Oklahoma City, which brought me to New York. And when I'm talking with these guys, because we have drivers, there was 2 drivers in each bus, they tell me there's like a network of, they'll pick up one band and leave them in one city, pick up another band, take them to another city. This, like, all of this goes on, and like, I won't mention the names of the bands, but one band will loan their tour bus to somebody else, who will loan their tour bus to somebody else, and it's like a relay across the country, and some dispatcher is basically connecting all the dots. And so I spent 3 days in a couple of tour buses with 4 different drivers to get to New York.
Did you find, I know there's a version of this, like Sammy Hagar does it with his jet. Like there's a jet version of this and a bus version of this. Did you find that even though, at first glance, nobody wants to take a bus cross country, but did you find that you're able to get more work done and have an environment that you would just never be able to recreate as long as you were sort of on your feet and running like OJ through an airport?
It's so funny you say that because I literally got more done in 3 days than I could have in 30. I've never been as productive in my life. You're on a bus, there's nowhere you can go. The only time you stop is at a Love's truck stop every whatever number of miles, where you run outside, grab something, and I do understand now. I have a greater appreciation for the United States, having traveled and not fly over. I mean, the country is beautiful and expansive and gorgeous, and you tend to forget about that sometimes when you're always in an urban center. But yes, you're infinitely more productive in that situation because there's nothing else you can do.
I feel the same way about prison. I've always said, I don't want to do 8 years, but just 9 months. I really feel like I could come out with I could do my Broadway play that rivaled Hamilton if you just left me alone with a ballpoint and a steno pad for 9 months.
Well, I'm going to tell a story. I will change the name, although somebody will probably guess who it is. But first, should we talk about the Podcast One survey for a second?
Sure.
Okay. Help this podcast, help Adam and me stay free. Shouldn't that be our expression? Help Adam and me stay free to download with the survey. Mm-hmm. Responses will help. I just told somebody I hate this word, but responses will help align the appropriate advertisers to our audience. It's short, no more than 5 minutes, and completely anonymous. That's the best way. 2 easy ways. Go to podcastone.com/mysurvey or go to podcastone.com and click on the survey banner. If you filled this survey out in the past, we thank you, but we need you to do it again. Right?
Right. Okay, questions.
Okay, so wait. Go into prison. Yes. So I have said this, and I will not name the guys because, for whatever reason, they've gone on to do better things and great work afterwards. But I've told a couple of clients, look, especially in the federal system, you're going to go away. You're going to go away for 18 months. You're going to go away for 20 months. And in both cases that I'm thinking of that immediately come to mind, the clients were, let's just say, over 100 pounds overweight. Mm-hmm. And I've said, roughly somewhere between your age, Adam, and my age, okay? Mm-hmm. So not spring chickens, although we both, are concerned with fitness. And I tell them, look, you're going to go there. You're going to, all of a sudden, you've got, in both cases, they had extremely high blood pressure, pre-diabetic or diabetic, high cholesterol, the whole thing, walking time bombs. They said, just go there, drop the weight, get fit, concentrate on yourself, and take it as like a fitness spa, basically. Both times, both guys came out after doing whatever it was, 12, 14 months, and were almost virtually unrecognizable. I mean, it not only shaved 10 years off their looks, but probably added 15 years to their life.
I'm completely convinced that almost every time somebody gets tasked with something that seems unfortunate, like when you talk about somebody and, I broke my leg in 3 places and I was laid up for 3 months, and that's when I got the idea for this company, or that's when I found this or realized that, or that's when I took that bus across the United States and saw the middle of the country and got so much work done finally because I wasn't in this environment that you're used to. It's a weird thing because nobody voluntarily pulls themselves out of their environment. You must be pulled out of your environment. You must have the doctor say you can't fly and you need to go to New York, or you need the judge to say you need to do 15 months and not in Beverly Hills. So it's weird because it turns out, look, people get sober, people lose weight, people find Jesus Christ. There's so many things, but yet we would never self-impose that. But
it's a strange phenomenon. I've watched it over the last, almost 4 decades. When you get a timeout, and it's revelatory almost in a way. You can really make the change. Gives you time for introspection. When you think about some of the most famous people in the history of civilization who have spent some time in prison, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, and then kind of the existential change that they've gone through while having this time out that they never would have, that nobody basically would impose on themselves, so to speak. It almost has to be from outside.
We will be the only 2 client-attorney duos ever in the courtroom when we find out from the judge that we can't beat my vehicular manslaughter charge to high five and hug it out as I go away for 17 months.
Hey, Adam, I'm going to join you. Judge, sentence me as well. I want to go. Well, that's one of the jokes that I tell clients often is when a guy will say, I'll say, look, let's just get you electronic monitoring, and they'll say, well, what does that involve? And I said, usually electronic monitoring is you go to work, you can do certain other carve-outs, basically go to the doctor. Sometimes you can even go to religious services or things like that. But then when you're done with that and work, you have to go home. And guys will bitch and moan, I don't want to be on this anymore. I don't want to be on the monitor. I'll say, why? Where do you have to go? What is it you have to do other than work and go home? Why is that an inconvenience? I don't understand it.
Well, nowhere good. All right, so a couple of things. I'll tee up a few things. There's a lot of talk going on with FBI and lots more sort of legal stuff as it pertains to Trump and then the investigation, and now the worm is turning a little and it's focusing on the FBI and Strzok and his life partner in there and some of their texts and things of that, or Strzok, I should say. Weird right. Spelling.
Who
and
people don't know was the DOJ lawyer and the agent, who were apparently having a little tryst.
These are text messages that probably don't amount to a hill of beans, but if you're trying to make the argument that these guys were working inside and big Hillary fans, it's not good to have texts that say, like, we're not going to let Trump get elected, or we'll fix this, or not on my watch. I'm sure there's nothing they did or could do, but these are still pretty damning text messages. Would you agree?
I totally agree, and I sound like a broken record. I say every time, there's just something delicious, having done this for so many years, to watch what happens when they cannibalize themselves.
And then Avenatti, Stormy Daniels' guy, the thing that's funny about, as you bring up cannibalize themselves, the guy appears on MSNBC and CNN 163 times in 4 days, and now they're explaining they don't really like that guy because he's a media whore.
Well, this is one of the reasons that I gave some unsolicited advice is, they just understand there is a certain seduction to the media that you have to be in, I suppose, to understand. I mean, the ego is such that obviously anyone and everyone is drawn to it, or most, if not all people are. But at the same time, it'll eat you up, as you say. It'll cannibalize you.
Yeah, so he's not in their good graces anymore, although the only reason we know who he is because he was their hero 3.5 weeks ago. And I'm not sure if he's laying low or they've just decided not to put him on anymore. And I don't know that sunlight was a good thing for him because he seems like a little bit of a vampire. I don't know where the Stormy Daniels case is, and I don't know where the FBI cases. I hear rumblings about they're going after Comey and they're going after Loretta Lynch or whomever. I don't think you think much of that. What do you think?
I don't think much of that. I do think that I still think that people underestimate what the special counsel Mueller has developed so far. I think that the people will be surprised. I'll give you the coming attractions. I think when the indictment is brought, and there will be indictments, I can guarantee you of that, it'll be shocking, and people will say, wow, we didn't know. Wow, we didn't know. I mean, I think there's more to this than people understand, and that this is the way that federal investigations always go. There's a lull. People always want, one of the biggest problems you have with clients, they always want closure. Call the U.S. attorney, find out what they're doing. I say, no, that's the last thing you want to do. You don't want to engage. You don't want to do this. You do your parallel investigation, meaning from the defense standpoint, and then you try to do what it is that will position your client best. But going out there and what Manafort is reputed to have done, and today he was apparently remanded into custody, is you don't want the client doing stuff, and you don't want the client trying to get too clever by half by contacting witnesses or doing whatever. I think that there is a lot more that we don't know, and I just say that having defended these cases for decades, that you never know what they've got, but generally they're not just spinning their wheels for no reason, and they will, if they want you, they're going to get you. That's just the reality of it.
So this notion of, it's been over a year, and we haven't even heard anything, and there have been a couple of indictments, but these guys are, small fish, leading people into a sense of nothing to see here is false. News will happen when it's ready. I understand that if you're, I completely understand it. I haven't been there, done that. If you're on the defense side of this, that's absolutely the narrative you want people to believe, because after all, who's your ultimate audience? If you get indicted, or if you're somebody who thinks their client is in the crosshairs, that's the narrative you want, you're going to embrace. But the reality is, and depends on what they've developed in terms of the evidence, the reality of it is that they probably you probably got a pretty good idea of what they do know. And somebody like Manafort, every time they do a filing, and I've read some of these filings, they've got stuff. They've got more than they're tipping their hand about, and I know, and he knows that there's kind of chess moves that you have to play. You don't want necessarily a pardon if you're Manafort yet, because if you get pardoned immediately, there's still as we've discussed before, there's still the specter of the state coming after you. And how do I know that? Well, just this week, the New York Attorney General went after or sued the Trump Foundation. So they're right smack dab in the middle of this. I'll bet you, I don't have all the access to the file, but I'll bet you the New York Attorney General was fed stuff about the Trump Foundation from the special counsel's office. And so if the state prosecutor, which is the Attorney General, is involved, which they clearly are because they're suing the Trump Foundation, then I pardon federally isn't going to do you much good. What? I mean, it'll do you great good federally, but it doesn't solve your state problems. Let me tell you quickly about ZipRecruiter, and then I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you for a timeline. I'm going to tease two questions for you, Mark. One is general timeline, like, hey, when's the ball dropping on this piece of real information that you keep alluding to, and also leaks. I hear a lot of stuff seems to be leaked. I guess from a layman's standpoint, I would challenge you by saying, hey, man, every time a piece of information comes out, it seems to get leaked. So why isn't this real stuff that has meat on the bone, why isn't that being leaked, would be my challenge to you. If your assertion is there's a bunch of good stuff, they got good stuff, how come none of the good stuff gets leaked? I'll let you think about that. First, I'll tell you about ZipRecruiter. Hiring used to be hard, now it's easy, and you only have to go to one place to get it done. ZipRecruiter.com/doubt. ZipRecruiter scans thousands of resumes, identifies people with the right experience, and invites them to apply to your job. 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. So 80% within the first 24 hours. With results like that, it's no wonder ZipRecruiter is the highest-rated hiring site in America. Oh, they got it right. ZipRecruiter.com/doubt. Right now, our listeners can try it out for free at this exclusive web address. ZipRecruiter.com/doubt. Try it out for free.
I just got one of my staff she's going back to school, so she had to give her notice. I'm going to try it for her position. ZipRecruiter.com/DOUBT. The smartest way to hire. All right, so if there's good stuff in there, how come that's not leaked? They generally, this is an interesting question because I've gone back and forth on this. There had been, people keep talking about the fact that the special counsel's office has not leaked, although there's been a whole lot of information that's come out that arguably could have only come from the special counsel. And so I think one of the reasons is that generally, look, the biggest leakers in the world are law enforcement, and that's one of my main complaints historically with gag orders, because the gag order may gag the defense, so to speak, meaning you can't talk, the lawyer can't talk, and the prosecutor can't talk, but they can't do anything with the investigative agency. And the investigative agency knows that if they talk to a reporter, at least in state court or under the state reporter's privilege, you can't get the reporter to talk and dime out whoever the source was. So gag orders are useless. So if you start with the premise that law enforcement leaks like a sieve, I think that's one of the reasons that they haven't revealed what they do have is that they understand that if it comes out now or before they're ready to indict, that the information may get destroyed. And I think that's a real fear, or that somebody will get a heads up and do something kind of proactive or preemptively to avoid it. I think that's the only reason. I think it's self-preservation in the sense that they're just trying to protect their own case.
So they're not leaking. I mean, in terms of leaking, they're letting you hear the stuff they want you to hear,
exactly.
And not stuff that could help you as a bit of a heads up in terms of counteractions or a reaction to what that is. And then a date. What do you think? It's been, what's it been, 14 months or something?
The cynic in me says before the midterms. I mean, remember, that's what Comey did before the election, reopening, closing, reopening. And I think that you're going to see something significant before the November election.
So, and then also, if somebody says, does this make sense, this statement? If this information is dropped sort of strategically before the midterms, doesn't Trump get to go, you see what they're doing, this partisan crowd over here that is simply trying to ruin the election, as they claim Russians did? They're doing the same thing, but from within the United States. Why else would 17 and a half months have gone by and then they choose to drop it the week before? Are they going to hurt their own possible legitimate case by doing that?
Yeah, because I think there's a certain degree of you get insulated. You're in a camp. You're in a bubble. I mean, like all things. And I think that you don't understand how that plays out. And I think anybody who tried to wade through the 500-page IG report will understand exactly what I'm talking about. Because if you look at that, it's the same thing. It's that bubble mentality. It's that we're kind of, I always laugh about the targets thinking that they're above the law, but law enforcement to some degree thinks that they're above the law in a lot of ways. And so I just don't think that people understand the ramifications. The irony is that in terms of federal investigations, 18 months is just a drop in the bucket, because usually these things move at a glacial pace. I've had cases, federal investigations, that have lasted 4 years, knocking on the door of some statute of limitations that are 5 years, where they actually want to enter into what's called a tolling agreement, where the prosecutor will say, we're still investigating, and I'll say, well, what do you mean you're still investigating? The statute's going to run. They say, yeah, well, you need to sign a tolling agreement, meaning we'll extend the statute of limitations. That's normally the case, is that they're up against the statute.
Do you think that Trump and Sean Hannity and others that are like-minded are actively pursuing a sort of corrupt FBI, corrupt Obama administration, corrupt Democratic Party, and Donna Brazile and Hillary Clinton, to essentially create another case so that whatever comes out can be dismissed as partisan politics?
Yes, and it's no different, to my mind, to what happened in the 90s with Whitewater and everything else. I mean, to listen to these people talk now cracks me up, because they were on the other side of the fence 20 years ago, and that's why I just love to sit and watch this. And I was a player last time, and I'm not this time, and there is a certain amount of irony about all of this in watching it happen or unfold, that the exact same arguments that are being made on the right today were the exact same arguments that were being made on the left 20 years ago.
And lastly, I wanted to circle back to USC, because we started USC and we got into Cosby, and I wasn't sure about the USC case.
Gary, did you pull it up to see what, so you could give us the names? Because my memory is that he's a gynecologist, and they raided his house this week, and this investigation has caused, as I mentioned before, the president, or whatever his title was at the school, to have to step down. And I think they brought in
Max Nikias is the campus president.
Yeah. And didn't Caruso take over as the head of the board as well, the noted developer in L.A.?
So... so the case is against the gynecologist?
Yeah, but the argument will be is that the university is looking the other way.
Dr. George Tyndall is the gynecologist in question.
What's he accused of? I mean, one could probably close your eyes and do some, probably not welfare fraud. He had a scam where he'd say he'd have to paint your address on the roof of your house so that the fire department helicopter could find it. I'm guessing it had something to do with pussy.
That's correct.
How did you guess that, Adam?
I'm very intuitive. Sorry, Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a pattern. It's described as a pattern of creepy behavior, different reports from different women, but some hinky stuff going on during pelvic exams.
And he's like the campus gynecologist?
He is an employee of USC, yes, a campus doctor, and these allegations now go back to the early 90s.
So all they have to do is there's the new burden here, which is you're dealing with old school guys. It's Joe Paterno, right?
Yep.
You're dealing with guys that they're not saints, but they're not the devil. They're from a different bygone era where they heard something and they said, I don't want to hear about it. Tell them to stop and let's focus on football or whatever it is. And that's what they're guilty of. And when we find that out by today's standards, then the shit show begins, right?
That's exactly right. You can't, and that light at the end of the tunnel is not light. It's a train coming right at you.
By the way, of note, when you Google Dr. George Tyndall these days, the first 3 results that come up are sponsored results from law firms who are trying to collect their clients.
Because there's going to be multiple clients.
That means there is big money behind these ads.
And a big pot of money to go after.
Sorry, I didn't scroll far enough. The first 5.
Wow.
Yeah, it's going to be a feeding frenzy like nothing you've ever seen.
Well,
I mean, literally like nothing. It's going to make the U.S. gymnast case and that payout look paltry.
Well, you think about the perfect storm. You have to have the right climate and Me Too and abuse of power and so on and so forth. And then you have to have a bottomless pot of money that is USC, and you take those two and you put them together, and that is vinegar and baking soda right there. That's a chemical reaction.
Of note, as of 2017, the USC endowment sits at about $5.1 billion.
Oh, boy. Somebody's going to get their hands. A lot of people are going to get their hands on that, right?
That's a lot of tour buses.
Now, how much of that is this prediction settled? Everything settled?
They're going to have to. You cannot let, somebody's going to have to corral all of this together and deal with it in one fell swoop. And having dealt with SC over the years, I can guess who the players are. I know who is going to be involved, and at some point somebody's going to have to sit down and they're going to have to literally just write a check in order to make this, in order to contain the damage, because it can be nuclear.
And also, this is one of those cases where if you're on his roster, it doesn't matter if he did a legitimate pelvic exam of yours or not. You're just on the roster. Good luck.
Well,
Having the burden of proof is on him to prove he didn't do anything untoward, right?
Right, and he's not going to be talking. And besides that, I would imagine there's not that many people that were in the room. So talk about he can't say versus she said. That's what the end of the day is going to be. I mean,
literally everybody that ever went and saw him can get involved with this claim.
Yeah, Mark, I have a question. Can somebody, is there a world in which you could say, I saw this doctor, he didn't get hinky with me, but you exposed me to a predator? Is that something someone could do?
Absolutely. I mean, there will be claims about negligent infliction of emotional distress. That will, and you've got touching involved, so there's going to be. I mean, I can't even tell you what the only thing that will be arguable is the statute of limitations, and even that may not be.
All right, let's move on to happier news. We'll close out with Tommy John. Summer's here. How the old cotton boxers holding up? Soggy, damp. Not designed to handle the sweat. Check out Tommy John. Combines the latest fabric technology with patented wedgie-proof designs. Almost like wearing nothing at all. I'm wearing mine right now. I know when Garrigus has to take a 6-hour flight or a 72-hour bus.
When I go cross country, I wore my Tommy John the whole way.
Always best to pack. Super lightweight. I just roll them up and throw them in my bag like a hot dog. And speaking of the hot dog, no swamp-like conditions down below. Tommy John's moisture-wicking fabrics, pull perspiration, right? That's why I get the big bucks. Right off the body. Cool cotton fabric dries 4 to 5 times faster, keeps you 3 times cooler than traditional cotton. It's just the best, and it's backed by the best pair you'll ever wear, or it's free guarantee. Am I right, Gary?
You are absolutely right. Hurry to TommyJohn.com/Adam for 20% off your first order. That's TommyJohn.com/Adam for 20% off. TommyJohn.com/Adam.
All right. So, Mark, now you had a moratorium on flying for about 30 or 40 days, was it?
Yeah, exactly. And I've got to go see the Big 3 debut game in Houston on the 22nd of June, and so I think I'm going to bus it there.
You may become the Armenian John Madden.
Right, I was thinking about that. I had to explain that, by the way, Adam, which is really disconcerting that people don't know what that reference means.
You know what we should do? We should get you just a big tour bus, like John Madden had, like Outback Steakhouse or something, like sponsor his. Maybe
I'll get LegalZoom to sponsor my tour bus.
We'll make the first half of the bus, the first 15 feet, we'll make it an ambulance. We'll make the second part you chasing the ambulance with a fistful of money. And we'll just have you we'll have you crisscross the nation. That'd be great, right?
I love it.
All right, you can tell Ben about that after you tell him my good cop, boring cop joke.
Yeah, What do you got coming up for you this next week?
I got live shows, Thousand Oaks, Borderline Bar and Grill. That's July 27th and August 29th, Pasadena Ice House with Dr. Drew up on stage.
Oh.
And then Seattle Moore Theater, September 13th. Live shows everywhere. Go to Chassis and pre-order Uppity. A lot of good stuff going on with that. It's coming out in July, and I'm really excited about it. CHASSY. What do you got, Mark?
I got the Capri Southampton Hotel where the U.S. Open is this weekend. We've got the V Palm Springs where it's hot, yet Gary will tell you it's great. And if you don't want it that hot, go to the Casa Tropicana in San Clemente or go downtown, Engine Company 2810 Mediterranean Tapas, or if you're in New York, Prova Pizza in Grand Central Station, coming soon to Times Square.
Yeah, somebody shot me a tweet about Prova.
Yep.
So, until next time, Adam Carolla for Mark Garriga saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode. This is Corolla Digital.